Now going to question 11. Here, if we start with the prompt is asking us for data in the graph that supports the researcher's hypothesis. So what is their hypothesis? So let's start reading through the text for that. Many plants lose their leaf color when exposed to this antibiotic produced by microorganisms. These researchers hypothesized that plants' response to exposure to this chemical involves altering their uptake of metals such as iron and zinc. The researchers grew two groups of seedlings of a certain plant, half of which were exposed to the chemical and half of which were a control group without exposure to it. And they measured the plant's metal content 5 days after germination. So we're looking for an answer that's going to support the hypothesis. And the hypothesis was that their response to that chemical exposure involves altering their uptake of metals, such as iron and zinc. So we're looking for the plants that had the chemical having a different uptake of metals. And is that what we're seeing in the graph? Well, the ones with the chemical had less zinc metal content, and they had much less iron content as well. And so the graph definitely seems to support the idea that yes, exposure to this chemical alters the uptake of these two types of metals. So now let's look at the answers. A says the control plants contained higher levels of zinc than iron, but plants exposed to it contain higher levels of iron than zinc. Well, that's definitely true. So we'll at least keep that one for later. The big thing I noticed is that both of them went down as we went from without the chemical to with it. But it is also significant that the sizes traded places. Here, the iron was greater, and here, the zinc was greater. So looking at B, both groups of plants contain more than 200 parts per million of both iron and zinc. So there's nothing about the change, about the altering, which is what we're looking for. C, zinc levels were around 300 in the control plants, but nearly 400 in the ones that were exposed. Well, that's saying that the levels went up and they actually went down. D, the plants exposed to the chemical showed lower levels of iron and zinc than the control plants did. Well, that's perfect. Without that, maybe we would have picked A. But D shows the most dramatic thing about the results that supports the hypothesis, that both levels of metal uptake went down as a result of the exposure. So the answer here is definitely